Hey everyone, and welcome back to my tutorial series on how to build a multifunctional, object-oriented Discord bot in Python. So up till now, we haven't been focusing too much on where profiles are going to get posted, right? We've simply just been previewing it and posting it to the channel that we enter our information into. But that's not really going to work, is it? Because we don't want the clutter of profile creation to go on in the channel where profiles are posted. Okay, we want to keep those things separate. We want to have a private channel, or a separate channel at least, for all the clutter that comes with creating a profile, and then a separate channel or group of channels in which to post the profile. Okay, so today we're going to be making a configuration module that can store the channels that people are going to be allowed to post their profiles in. All right, and we're going to make it expandable, so as we implement additional features, we can use this configuration module, this class that we're going to make, to hold configuration settings and aspects for other features as well. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and start in our classes directory, not in profiles, but in the outer classes directory. We'll create a new Python file and call it config. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and give you all the imports up front. Okay, I think you know how to scroll back up and add imports as you need them. So it's just going to be easier to avoid that scrolling later on and put them all here now. Okay, so from future, import annotations. From Discord, we're going to import embed and text channel. From typing, we're going to import type checking as usual, and also list, type, and type var. From utilities, we want to import everything. And then if we're type checking, from classes.guild, we want to import guild data. Okay? And then, as we've done in all of our other modules, let's go ahead and define Dunder all. Okay? And all that's going to be in this module is one class called guild configuration. All right? Just like that. And since we're going to need a type variable for this, since we're going to create a load class method as we have in our profile classes, let's go ahead and just define that now. So GC equals a type variable, GC in quotes, and then bound to guild configuration. Like that. Configuration. There we go. Okay, so down here in the next section, let's say class guild configuration, and it'll just be a regular class. And underneath, let's define our slots real quick. We only need two things here. All right, I want a reference to the parent guild data, and then we're also going to have an attribute called profile channels, which is going to be a list of the channels that a server administrator has okayed for posting. Alrighty, so next let's write our init function. We can go ahead and make this a standard init method, so we aren't going to take in a generic keyword arguments and use keyword arguments.pop and look for keywords. We're just going to pass in the values that we want to set for the attributes. Okay, so def init, and we're going to take a reference to the parent, which is a guild data, and profile channels, which is going to be a list of text channels, okay? And self.parent guild data equals the parent that we've passed in, self.profile channels, which is a list of text channels, equals the profile channels that we passed in. Super, super simple init. Okay. Next up, let's go ahead and add our database entries, okay? So in our database module here, in the assert database structure function, let's say right here at the top under our cursor definition, let's make another SQL statement, and we'll say c.execute, and let's create table if not exists guild config open parenthesis, and then we only want two things here. We want the guild ID, which is a big int, unique, and not null, and our post channels, which is just going to be a text field. Then we drop down and we'll do the same thing as we've done below, which is constraint guild config underscore p key, primary key, guild ID, close double parentheses. There we go. Okay, so this will make our table for guild configuration settings. And let's also, while we're in the database module, let's come down here under new profile entry and new image, and let's make a new guild entry. Okay, so when our bot enters a guild, we're going to call this method that we're going to create, and it's going to make an entry into the configuration database table for us. Okay, so def new guild entry, and this is only going to take a guild ID, which is an integer. No return, and let's do a simple SQL query. So C equals database connection.cursor, C.execute, and let's say insert into guild config, in parentheses, guild ID, post channels, and then we'll say values %s, %s. Okay, and then we'll drop down and say guild ID and an empty list for now. Alrighty, because if we just joined a guild, we're not going to have any posting channels to save. So let's just instantiate it with an empty list. And now down here, let's say dbconnection.commit and c.close to clean up. Okay, so let's go into our internal cog, and we'll create a listener right here in this section below our onReady listener. Okay, so let's go ahead and say at cog.listener, cog with a capital C .listener, and this listener is going to be called onGuildJoin. Okay, and let's go ahead and name the function the same thing just for ease of viewing. Async def onGuildJoin self, and then it's going to get passed in the guild that we've joined, which is a Discord guild, and it won't have any return. Okay, so this is going to be super straightforward. First thing we want to do is head up here to the top, and I want to import from our database the function that we created down here, the new guild entry. But before we do that, let's go into the under all of our database and export new guild entry so we have access to it. Okay, so now back in internal, we can import new guild entry. And then in our onGuildJoin, let's first print a statement to our logs that tells us that we've joined a guild. Okay, so guild joined, how exciting. And let's go ahead and log the information about the guild. So guild.id is first, and then guild.name. That seems like enough information. And then we can drop down and call that new guild entry method that we created in the database module and just drop in the guild ID that way. Okay? And we can say print database entry created. Okay? And that's our onGuildJoin listener. So when we test later and we join an additional guild, it'll tell us that we've joined it, and it will create that database entry for us. Excellent. Okay. But while we're dealing with this, I also want to cover the situation of the bot joining a guild while it's offline. Because in that event, we aren't going to get this on guild join event, right? Because we're offline. And so we won't have the opportunity to make that new entry. So we also want to create a database routine that runs through all of the guilds in our bot and makes sure that there is an entry for it. Okay, so let's go to our database module again, and right here under assert database structure, we're going to say def assert guild records. Okay, and this is going to take in some guilds, which is a list of Discord guild. Okay, with no return. And let's go to the top and we will import list from typing, so right here. And then from Discord, import guild, like that. Okay, So now let's make a cursor, as we've done before. So C equals dbConnection.cursor. And now what we want to do is we want to iterate through those guilds that we've passed in and run a SQL command for each one. So for guild in guilds, c.execute, insert into, actually, we can just come down here and we can just copy this. All right, because we've already written this SQL statement and that's a lot easier. But now I want to add a space after the values and drop down, and I want to add an on conflict statement, because if we try to add this record again without an on conflict statement, we're going to get an error for any guilds that already exist in the database, because the guild ID can't be repeated. That's the primary key, right? So here I want to say on conflict guild ID in parentheses, do nothing. All right, and then for our arguments, we'll pass the guild.id and an empty list, because obviously if it's not in the database, it's a new guild and we don't have any channels for it. So we can simply put an empty list. And then here outside the for block, let's say dbConnection.commit and then close our cursor like we always do. Okay, and now back in our internal cog, what I want to do here under assert database structure, because this is the function in which we make sure that the configuration table actually exists, then let's assert the records in that table. So here below it, we can say asserting guild records, and we can call that function that we just created in database. So let's export that in Dunder All really quickly here. Assert guild records. And in our internal cog, let's also make sure that we import that as well. And actually that line's getting a little long, so let's simply say star from utilities. Okay, and here under that print statement, we can call assert guild records and pass in self.bot.guilds, okay? Because since this is a cog, we have access to self.bot like that. So we're done with our internal cog and our database module for the time being. Let's head back into our configuration class, and under the init, let's define our load method, okay? So into this load method, it's going to be a class method, and we're going to say def load, which will take the class, which is going to be a type GC, which is why we created this type variable up here. Remember, this is how we define what class is being passed into the class method. It'll take a reference to the parent, which is a guild data, and it'll take some data, which is going to be a list of text channels. And to us, it will return a GC, guild configuration. Okay, so this is going to be super straightforward. We just want to return this class, parent equals parent, profile channels equal data. Okay, boom, all done. So that's our load class method. Let's go ahead and make an update method as well. That's going to update our database when we add or remove profile channels. So def update, update with no return. And this is going to be the same behavior as in our profile classes. So c.dbconnect, c equals dbconnection.cursor. And then we'll say c.execute. Our statement is going to be update guild config set post channels equal to %s where guild ID equals %s. And our arguments, well, our arguments are actually going to be a list of post channel IDs, right? But we're actually going to access a list of IDs frequently. So what I want to do is I just want to make a property that's going to return that for us. So here between update and load, we're going to say property. And this is going to be, oh no, all kinds of stuff's happening. What is going on? Def post channel IDs. And then what we want to return is a list, and it's going to be list comprehension. So c.id for c in self self.profile channels. Just like that. Oops, for C in self.profile channels. There we go. So now down here in our update method, we can say self.postChannelIDs, and then we can also pass self.parent.parent.id. That seems a little weird, right? Because we're accessing the parent guild data of the configuration, but then we're accessing the parent guild of the guild data. So what I want to do is jump into our guild data really fast. And down here, let's say under the load method, let's create a property to expose the guild ID. So we'll say property def guild ID, and this is going to return us an integer. And all it's going to return is self.parent.id, just to make accessing it a little easier. So we can close out of our guild, and back in config, let's just say now in our update method self.parent.guildid. Easy enough. Now down here, let's say dbconnection.commit, c.close, and we're all done. Very cool. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to jump into our bot. And just like we loaded our profiles, here under our init, let's go ahead and create a method to load our guilds. Okay, so this is going to be async def load guilds. And with no return, it'll just be working inside of itself. And we'll do a database query just like we did here in load profiles. So actually, I'm just going to copy this because I'm a little lazy right now. And we'll change profile master to guild config. And everything else should stay the same. Now, and then c.close as well. Let's not forget that. So now let's iterate through this data and create guild configurations for it. Okay, and actually, load our profile channels into the guild configurations. So for record in data, let's say the post channel IDs for the record equals int c for C in convert database list, the function that we made a long time ago when we were working on our early profile classes. And then we're going to drop in a record sub 1, because remember, in our database, record sub 0 is going to be the guild ID, which we've already dealt with. And now record sub 1 is the posting channels. So that's what we're looking for. And that's why we're using it this way. So let's drop down and we'll make an empty list called post channels. And we'll go through the posting channel IDs and have our bot try and pull those channels or fetch them from Discord. Okay, so for I in, let's say for CH in post channel IDs, the channel equals, well, what we could do here is we could do channel equals self dot get channel, and then we can put the channel ID, and if that returns none, then we could fetch the channel. But honestly, we do that a lot. So what I want to do is I want to drop down here under get frog, and we're going to create a new function to get channels for us. So we'll just make this an async function and call it get or fetch channel, kind of to match the get or fetch user method that's included with the bot. And this is going to take a channel ID, which is an integer, and to us it's going to return an optional text channel. So let's say that our return is going to first equal self.getChannel. So the bot is going to try and get the channel from the cache. Okay, but if return is none, which means it didn't find it in the cache, if return is not none, which means it did find it, let's go ahead and return ret. And we want to drop a type ignore here because it's a text channel. This is going to give us a guild channel. By default, as you can see here, it's a guild channel, a thread or a private channel, but we know for a fact that this is going to be a text channel because that's where profiles get posted to. Okay, But if it is none, we can drop down here and say return await self.fetch channel ID. Okay, and don't worry, that's fine. We can just say it, type ignore here, and everything is kosher. Okay, so one way or the other, we're going to return a channel, or in the event that this fetch fails, it's just going to return an exception. Okay, and that's bad. So we want to actually handle that. So let's drop down and actually put this in a try block. So let's try to return, okay, but in the event that we encounter an exception, specifically a not found error, which we need to import from Discord. So let's do that before we do anything else. So here before text channel, let's say not found, because that means that the channel itself wasn't found. So if we accept not found, let's just return. Okay. We're not gonna raise an error here. We're just going to return none. And let's be explicit. Let's even say return none. Okay. So that's our get our fetch channel. Let's jump back up into our load guilds, and we can say channel equals self.get or fetch channel and drop in ch, which is the channel ID. And if the channel is not none, which means that we found it successfully in the cache or got it from Discord, let's say post channels dot append channel. Okay, that's easy enough. And we'll go ahead and say guild equals self.getFrog, because we made this function already to get our guild data from within the bot. And this is going to be record sub-0, that guild ID. We'll say the configuration for that guild, config, equals a guild configuration, which we haven't imported. So let's make sure that we do that up here. So from, let's say here, from config, let's import, oh goodness, guild configuration. Okay, so oops, too far. There we go. Guild configuration dot load, that class method that we made, and we can drop in the parent guild, which is the guild that we got there. And we can also drop in the posting channels that we've created a list for here. Okay, but this is a coroutine, so we've actually forgotten to await self.getOrFetch. Okay, there we go. So let's say that the guild.config, okay, so this guild that we pulled, the configuration for it equals the config that we just created. And let's finally say that the post channels list equals an empty list. So when we iterate back through, it'll be empty. Oh wait, it instantiates up there. We don't need to say that. Extra code in my notes. My mistake. Okay, so where do we call load guilds? Well, let's just call it back in our internal cog, since we've got a listener for onReady. How about under loading the custom guild data, since we need that when we load the configuration, let's print loading guild configurations. And then here underneath that, we can say await self.bot.load guilds, just like that. And now we should have guild configuration data for our bot. Okay, very cool. Let's close that, and we can also close our bot for now. Okay, so next up, let's create a new cog that lets us interface with our configuration, because honestly, this configuration is going to get bigger and bigger as we add more functionality to the bot that requires more configuration, such as a time clock, raffles, bar buyouts, VIPs. All of these things are going to have settings, and we're going to keep them in this class. So that's why we're doing things like creating a load class method for something that we could literally just pass into the constructor. Right? This is literally doing the same thing, but later on there's going to be load behavior that we may want to put in here. So we're planning ahead. So now let's go to our cogs folder. We'll create a new Python file called c_config. And like I did before, I'm just going to give you the imports because we don't need to be scrolling up and scrolling back down and all of that. So from Discord, and we want to import, and I'm going to drop this down because it does get a little long, application context, channel type, cog, option choice, /command group, and /command option type. Okay, perfect. And then next up, let's say from typing, we want to import type checking, as we always do. From utilities, let's import everything. And then if we're type checking, I want to say from classes.bot, import frogbot. Cool. So let's go ahead and define our configuration cog. So we'll just do a couple of these. And this is going to be class configuration, which is a cog. And we'll do the same init that we do for all of our cogs. So def init. And this is going to take a bot. And remember, since we're going to be using options and option choices in our cog, so we can't import from future import annotations. We can't do that. So remember, if we can't or don't import annotations, we need to put our class names that are imported during type checking in quotes. So this is actually going to be frogbot in quotes, if I can spell it correctly. Okay, perfect. So self.bot, the attribute of the cog is a frogbot, again in parentheses, and this is going to be equal to the bot we passed in. Cool. Let's also define our setup entry point function down here. So outside of the class, we're going to def setup. This will take in a bot, which is a frogbot with no return. And we'll simply say bot.addCog configuration, and we'll pass in the bot to configuration. Okay. Let's also create here a /command group, because again, we're going to have more and more commands populating this cog as we proceed along. So let's just find a way to section it off now, just like we did with our profiles. So config equals /command group. The name of this group is going to be config, right? Easy enough. And the description, let's say commands pertaining to server-wide configuration. That seems simple enough. Okay, so let's drop down here, and inside of our class, we can define our status command. So let's do that first. So let's say @config.command. The name of the command is going to be channels. For now, we can probably change this to profile channels later on. Actually, let's just say profile channels, like that. And then the description is going to be equal to view a list of all, let's just say available profile posting channels. Oh goodness, profile posting channels for this server. Okay. And below, we'll say async def config posting channels. And this will take in a CTX, as we always do, with no return. Okay, so we're going to do the same logic to get our guild as we did in the profiles, right? We can just say guild equals self.bot.getFrog. Oops, not get guild. Get frog. And into the function, we'll just pass the ctx.guildid. Okay, and now we'll just make a shortened reference to our configuration equals guild.config. And down here, we'll say await ctx.respond, and we'll just say the embed equals config.status. Now, we haven't made the status function yet, but we can do that now. So let's go back into our configuration class, And let's say above our property. I'm feeling above the property here. We can define our status function, which won't take anything and it will return an embed, just like we did in our profile sections. If you can kind of see a trend with the way that I name functions, just to keep it all straight in my head at least. We'll start out with the description for our embed being the string value of ns, okay? But if self.profile channels, so if there are channels that have been saved into our profile channels, well, the description is then going to equal a hyphen with a space plus new line hyphen space dot join. And then in here, I want to do some list comprehension, c.mention for c in self.profile channels. Okay, so this will get the mention and make it look just a little bit cleaner than having just the basic name of the channel. It'll look nice. You can click on the mention, etc., etc. So let's return our trusty make embed function. The title is going to be equal to available profile posting channels. And for the description, let's put some parentheses. And the first thing we want to do is an F string with draw separator and an extra of 20 and a new line outside the bracket. And then below we'll just put the description like that. And as always, or usual, typically we'll set timestamp to false. Okay, and that's all we need for our status function. So honestly, let's go ahead and test that status function and see if it's working. So we'll start up our bot. Oh, and it looks like I have misdefined the import. So let's go into our bot and from .config, no, not .config, classes.config, we need to access it that way. Let's go ahead and run our bot one more time. There we go. That's looking a lot better. Excellent, excellent. Okay. Jumping into Discord. Let's go ahead and just say config profile channels. Okay, cool. And as you can see, I've already set a profile posting channel for this particular server. I was testing it earlier and forgot to clear out my database. So you can see that it's working and even logging the mention of the profile channel in this vertical list. Okay, so now I want to create a command that's going to add or remove profile channels, right? Because all we can do right now is view the status. We can't edit them. So let's drop back out of Discord and we can close up our bot. There we go. Okay, so we can close this bot too. And in our configuration class, let's say under post channel IDs, I want to first create the functions that are going to add and remove channels, and then we can go back into our cog and create a / command that calls those. So the first function that we're going to take care of is def add profile channel. Okay, and this is going to take in the channel that we want to add, which will be a text channel, and it's not going to have any return. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is check and see if this channel is already in our posting channels. Okay, so if channel.id not in self.post channel IDs, that's going to be the easiest way to compare, right? Self.profilechannels.append the channel we passed in. And then we can say self.update to make sure the database is updated. Okay. That was easy, right? Let's go ahead and make our remove channel function. So def remove profile channel. This is also going to take in a channel, which is a text channel. And of course, no return for now. Now, what we want to do here is we're going to need the index of the channel if it exists, right? So let's enumerate through our self.profile channels. So for IC in enumerate self.profile channels, And we want to compare the two channels. So if c.id, the channel ID in profile channels, equals the channel.id that we passed in, then let's say self.profilechannels.pop the index of that particular listing. And of course, we'll update to make sure that the database is all squared away. And then we can just return, because there's only ever going to be one channel record with that ID. So we don't need to keep going through this list. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Let's go back over to the configuration cog, and now we can make a slash command that invokes those functions. And we can just make this below the profile channels command at config.command. The name for this is going to be post channel, or let's call it profile channel. You know what? That's too much like the other one. Let's call it post channel. And the description is going to be add or remove a profile posting channel. Remove lowercase e. There we go. Okay, and then we'll define the function async def config posting channel. And then let's go ahead and drop this down, because we're going to add some options, and those do get kind of long. So it takes in the self, a CTX as always, which is an application context. And then let's say OP for operation is going to be an option. And this will be a slash command option type.string. Easy enough. Name is going to equal operation. Description is going to be whether to add or remove an available profile posting channel. We do want to require this so we know what operation we're performing. That's kind of important, right? And then we can pass in the choices as just a list directly in here. This is going to be an option choice, and the text in it will be add. And then let's also add one for remove. Okay, cool. Let's add one more option, and this is going to be the channel that we want to add or remove. Okay, so this is going to be slash command option type.channel, which will force the user to input a channel in Discord. So instead of just inputting a string or an integer, this is going to present the user with a list of channels in the server. So kind of helpful. The name is going to be equal to channel. Description is going to be the posting channel to add or remove. And we do want to require this. Obviously, we need to know the channel. That would be silly to not require it. Okay? Cool. So now what we want to do is the very first thing we want to do is check and see if this channel type is a channel type.text. Okay? Because if it's not a text channel, then we don't want to process it. It's not going to be able to be removed because it's not in the list, and we're not going to add it because we can't post profiles to it, right? So if not channel.type equals channel type.text, then we want to create an error message, okay? And this is going to be a channel type error. And let's pass in the name of the type of channel that we want. Okay, and we'll do our normal error handling, await ctx.respond, embed equals error, and ephemeral equals true. And then finally, we can just return from there. So let's define this error. Let's go over into our errors module. And down here at the bottom is a perfectly lovely place. And in here, we'll say class channel type error, which is an error message. And as I usually do, I'll paste in the doc string so there's no ambiguity when we're looking at this and entering things from our code. And into the init, we're going to take the required type of channel, which is a string. Okay, so we can do the superclass call, super.init. The title of the embed is going to be invalid channel type. The message is going to be you entered a channel of an invalid type. Solution is going to be an F string, and channel argument must be of type required type. Required type. Okay, and that's all we need for channel type error, so we can jump back up here and export that as well. Okay, and let's leave this open because we're going to be creating a handful additional errors here in a bit. So in our cog, channel type error is no longer squigglied. That's good. So let's do our typical guild call behavior. So guild is going to be equal to self.bot.getFrog, and it's going to be the ctx.guild ID that we pass in here. Okay, and we'll get a shortened reference to the configuration module, so guild.config. And then let's go ahead and call the function in our configuration class, our guild configuration class, depending on which operation we're carrying out. So if op equals add, then config, then we're going to call config.add profile channel, and we'll pass in the channel like that. Okay, but otherwise, else config.remove profile channel, and we'll drop in the channel. Okay, and then last thing we want to do is confirm to the user that the channel has been deleted or added. So let's await ctx.respond embed equals config.status. Okay, excellent. Oh, indentation. There we go. Okay, so our cog now has a command that's going to let us add or remove a profile channel. So let's test it out. Go ahead and start up our bot. Great, we loaded properly. Let's go back here. No, I don't want Nitro. And we'll say add profile. There it is, channels. Okay, so configuration post channel, we're going to add one. And let's go ahead and add the profiles channel that I've created over here. And there we have it. Okay. So let's also try the remove behavior. Oops, that's from a different bot. There we go. So operation is remove, channel is, let's remove the bot testing channel. Okay. And as you can see, it's looking good. But this could get a little cluttered. So I want to add a close message button to our status message. Okay. So let's go back over here to our code. And we can just say in our commands, let's say here view equals close message view, which we haven't imported. So from UI, let's import star. Oh, and we haven't made an actual view for this. We've only made a close message button. So let's go into our common UI, and here under the close message button, let's define a class called close message view. Okay, and this is going to be a frog view. And into the init, we're going to take the owner, as we typically do, which is a union member user. I think you know that by now. And we'll call the superclass and pass in the owner. And then obviously close on complete needs to be equal to true so that we can get rid of the message when we're done. Okay, so down here, let's say self.addItem close message button. And we're good to go. Easy enough, right? Because the button does all the work. So let's go back up here and we'll export close message view. And then back here in our configuration cog, we can now say close message view with ctx view.user, and then let's pass the view into the response. Okay, and I'm just going to copy these two lines because we can do the same thing down here. And we can just get rid of that response. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it one more time and see if it looks a little better, if we can clean up after ourselves, and so on. Okay. So I'll just type config. Let's say profile channels. Okay, and it's closed. Very good. And let's go ahead and add bot testing again. And the close message button appeared, and it closed. Excellent. Okay, so I want to quickly remove bot testing for reasons later on. Okay, excellent. So we're in business. Now that we've got our configuration modules set up, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here because our next video, I promise, is going to have to do with profile posting. And that might take a little bit of time, so I'm just going to go ahead and stop now. Thanks for watching. I appreciate everyone, and we'll see you next time.